General Keth'vora had never requested anything in 400 years of service. When the summons came through encrypted channels, a single human prisoner, alive, unharmed. The Dominion Council nearly collapsed from shock. Commander Marcus Cole stood in the sterile white cell, wrists bound with energy cuffs that hummed against his skin. 3 weeks since the ambush. 3 weeks since his entire unit had been vaporized in the Theta Corridor offensive. He'd watched good soldiers become ash, and somehow, impossibly, he'd survived. The irony wasn't lost on him. The door hissed open. He'd seen images of Valorian generals before, towering figures in ceremonial armor, faces hidden behind war masks. What entered his cell was something else entirely. She stood perhaps 7 feet tall, her scaled skin shifting between deep purple and black like oil on water. No mask. No armor. Just simple gray robes that seemed almost humble. "You are Cole," she said. Not a question. "Commander Marcus Cole, Earth Defense Force, serial number. I know who you are." Her voice resonated at frequencies that made his chest vibrate. "I watched the footage from Theta Corridor 17 times. Your unit was dead. Your ship was breached. You had no weapon, no armor, no hope." Marcus said nothing. "Yet you carried Private Jensen's body for 6 kilometers through enemy territory. Corpse. You risked capture for a corpse. She deserved to go home." The general's vertical pupils contracted. For a long moment, she simply stared at him with those unsettling amber eyes. "I am dying," she said finally. Marcus blinked. Of all the things he'd expected from the most feared military commander in 3 galaxies, a confession wasn't among them. "My people do not die alone," Keth'vora continued. "It is complicated to explain. We require a companion for the final passage. Someone to witness. Someone to remember. And you want me." The laugh that escaped him was hollow. "Lady, I've got about 10,000 better candidates for whatever ritual you're running. People who actually want to be here. I do not want worship." Her tone sharpened. "I do not want fear. I watched you carry a dead woman through fire because you believed she deserved dignity. That is what I require. A pallbearer. A witness." Cuffs around his wrists clicked open, clattering to the floor. Marcus stared at his freed hands, then back at the general who had just made herself vulnerable in ways he couldn't fully comprehend. "What happens if I say no?" "Then you return to your cell, and I find another way. But I have studied your species for 60 years, Commander. You do not abandon the dying. It is not in your nature." She was right, and he hated her for it. "How long?" he asked. 3 moon cycles. Perhaps 4. Marcus looked at the open door behind her, at the guards who made no move to stop him if he chose to run. He thought about Jensen's body growing cold in his arms. About all the deaths he'd witnessed with no power to help. "Fine," he said. "But I'm not calling you General." For the first time something shifted in her expression. Not quite a smile. He wasn't sure her face could produce one, but something close. "Keth'vora will suffice." She turned and walked from the cell, clearly expecting him to follow. After a moment's hesitation, he did. The corridors of the Valorian flagship stretched endlessly, all sharp angles and bioluminescent panels that pulsed in rhythm with some heartbeat he couldn't see. Soldiers stopped and stared as they passed, not at him, but at her. Their posture screamed discomfort. Fear, even. "They don't know," Marcus realized aloud. "They know I am ill. They do not know the severity. Why keep it secret? Because the moment my weakness becomes known, everything I have built will crumble." She didn't slow her pace. "There are 17 admirals waiting to claim my position. Each one would restart the war your people have nearly won. My continued existence is the only thing preventing another decade of bloodshed. So I'm here to help you maintain a lie. You are here to help me die with purpose." They reached a door that opened into quarters far simpler than he'd expected. Sparse. Almost austere. A sleeping platform, a desk covered in holographic displays, and a single window looking out at the void. "This will be your room," Keth'vora said, gesturing to an adjacent chamber. "You will have full access to non-classified areas of the ship. The guards will not harm you, though I cannot speak for their hospitality. I've dealt with worse." "I imagine you have." She paused at the window, her reflection ghosting over the stars. "Tomorrow we begin. Begin what? I do not know yet." She turned to face him, and for a moment he saw past the legend. Past the warrior who had crushed entire fleets. He saw someone tired. Someone alone. "I have never done this before. Dying? Trusting?" She left him standing in the room that would be his cage, or his sanctuary, for the months ahead. Marcus sank onto the sleeping platform, which adjusted to his body with unsettling accuracy. He was a prisoner. A witness. Companion to a monster. And somehow, impossibly, he'd agreed to all of it. The first week established a routine that Marcus hadn't expected. Silence. Keth'vora worked. He existed in her periphery. Occasionally she would glance up from her tactical displays as if remembering he was there, then return to her calculations. He explored the ship, suffered the cold stares of Valorian soldiers, and ate meals that his translator assured him were nutritious, but his tongue registered as cardboard paste. It was during the second week that she finally spoke more than 3 words to him. "You pace," she observed without looking up. "I'm going crazy. Elaborate." Marcus stopped mid-stride. "I'm a soldier. I spent the last 6 years moving, fighting, doing something. You've got me sitting in a room watching you push holographic pieces around a board. You could leave. The recreational facilities are. I don't want recreation. I want to know why I'm here." Keth'vora's hands stilled over the display. When she finally looked at him, her expression was unreadable. "Come here." He approached the desk, expecting another dismissal. Instead, she shifted the display so he could see it clearly. "This is the Veth system," she said. 3 human colonies, approximately 40 million people. My predecessor wanted them destroyed. I have spent the last 2 years ensuring they remain standing. You're protecting human colonies. I am preventing genocide. Her tone carried no pride, no satisfaction, just fact. My people believe strength comes from dominance. I have learned that true strength comes from knowing when not to strike. That's not what the propaganda says about you. Propaganda rarely does. She gestured at the display, cycling through images of battles, negotiations, documents. I have killed many humans, Commander. I do not deny this. But I have also saved many more. The war your people are winning. You are winning because I allowed you to win. Why? Because your species fights differently. She stood, moving toward the window with that fluid grace that made her seem less like a creature of flesh and more like something liquid. You fight for each other. Not for territory or resources or glory, for each other. I watched your unit die at Data Corridor. Every one of them could have escaped. Everyone chose to stay and fight so others could live. That's just what soldiers do. No. That is what humans do. My soldiers flee when the odds turn. They preserve themselves because the individual matters more than the collective. She turned to face him. I have commanded armies for 4 centuries. I have never once seen a Valorian carry a fallen comrade through enemy fire. Marcus thought of Jensen again. Of her weight in his arms. Of the way her blood had soaked through his uniform. She was 19, he said quietly. First deployment. She was terrified the whole time, but she never broke. When the corridor collapsed, she was shielding a wounded engineer with her own body, and you carried her. I couldn't leave her there. She didn't deserve to be left. Keth'vora was silent for a long moment. Then she did something that made Marcus's heart stutter. She reached out and placed her scaled hand on his shoulder. The touch was cool, strange but somehow not unwelcome. "This," she said. "This is why you are here. Because you understand that death is not the end. It is a passage. And no one should walk that passage alone. I still don't understand what you want from me. I want you to see me." Her voice dropped, losing its commanding edge. "Not the general. Not the legend. Not the monster your people tell stories about to frighten children. I want someone to know who I truly was before I ceased to be." It was the most vulnerable thing anyone had ever said to him. And from the most feared being in the known galaxy. "Okay," Marcus said. "Then tell me." She did. Over the following weeks she told him about her youth on a dying world. About the training that had stripped away everything soft in her. About the first kill that haunted her still, 3 centuries later. A child soldier who had begged for mercy in a language she didn't speak. She told him about the lovers she'd lost, the friends who had betrayed her, the moments of beauty she'd found in the strangest places. And Marcus listened. He told her about Earth. About growing up in the Arizona desert, watching the stars and dreaming of touching them. About his father's death in the First Contact War and his mother's quiet strength in the years after. About Jensen and all the other soldiers he'd failed to save. They ate meals together. She started requesting food his translator claimed was closer to human cuisine, and while it still tasted like cardboard, it was thoughtful cardboard. They walked the observation deck in the ship's artificial night cycle, and she named constellations in her language while he named them in his. One evening, 3 weeks into his captivity, she collapsed. It happened without warning. One moment she was standing at her tactical display, the next she was crumpling like a puppet with cut strings. Marcus caught her before she hit the floor, her weight nearly crushing him. "Guards!" he shouted. "No." Her voice was weak, but sharp. "No guards, you need medical. I need you to help me to the bed. That is all." He half-carried, half-dragged her to the sleeping platform. Up close he could see the tremors running through her body, the way her scales had lost their luster. She was dying, he realized with sudden clarity. Actually dying. "How long?" he demanded. "I told you. 3 cycles. How long really?" She looked at him with those amber eyes, and for the first time he saw fear in them. "I do not know. Weeks. Perhaps days. Then we need to tell someone. Your people need to prepare. My people need to believe I am immortal for as long as possible." She gripped his wrist with surprising strength. "Promise me. I can't just watch you die and say nothing." "You can. You will. Her grip tightened. This is what I asked of you, Marcus. Not to save me. To witness. To remember. He wanted to argue. Every instinct screamed at him to call for help, to do something. But he looked at her face, exhausted, afraid, utterly alone. And he understood. Okay, he said. I promise. Her grip relaxed. Stay. I'm not going anywhere, no. I mean, stay here. Tonight. Tight. He hesitated only a moment before pulling a chair close to her platform. Her hand found his in the darkness, cool scales against warm skin, and neither of them let go until morning. The attacks came at night now. Seizures that racked her body while Marcus held her down to keep her from hurting herself. Moments of confusion where she didn't recognize him, where she snarled in her native tongue and reached for weapons that weren't there. And then the clarity would return, and she would look at him with such profound shame that it broke something in his chest. You should not have to see this, she said after one particularly bad episode. Stop saying that. I am serious. This is not what you asked me here for. Marcus wiped the sweat from her brow with a cloth that had become familiar over the past weeks. You asked me to witness. This is witnessing. I asked you to witness my death, not my decay. They're the same thing, Keth'vora. She flinched at the use of her name. He'd started using it deliberately, a small act of intimacy that seemed to ground her when the episodes left her disoriented. You are a strange creature, she said finally. Right back at you. Something that might have been a laugh escaped her, cut short by a coughing fit that left dark fluid on her palm. She stared at it with detached interest. Blood, she said. Internal hemorrhaging. I had hoped it would take longer to reach this stage. What can I do? Nothing. This is the nature of the disease. It takes everything, piece by piece. There has to be something, Marcus. She reached up and touched his face, her scaled fingers tracing the stubble along his jaw. I have accepted this. You must accept it too. He caught her hand, held it against his cheek. I don't accept death. I never have. Probably why I'm so bad at this whole witnessing thing. You are not bad at it. You are... She searched for the word. Present. That is all I ever needed. The door chime interrupted them. Keth'vora's eyes snapped to full alertness. Admiral Tethran, she said. Help me stand. You can barely, now. He helped her rise, steadying her with his body as the door opened to admit a Valorian male nearly as tall as Keth'vora. His scales a deep crimson that matched his ornate armor. General. Tethran's eyes flicked to Marcus with barely concealed disgust. I see you're still keeping your pet. The commander is my guest, Admiral. You will address him with appropriate respect. Respect. Tethran laughed. For a human prisoner. Council grows concerned, General. Your absence from recent sessions, your delegation of tactical authority, and now this. Creature at your side. There are whispers. Let them whisper. The whispers suggest weakness. Marcus felt Keth'vora's grip tighten on his arm. He could sense the effort it took her to remain standing, to project strength she no longer possessed. If you believe me weak, she said, her voice dropping to dangerous registers, you are welcome to challenge me in the traditional manner. Unless you fear a dying human more than you fear me. Tethran's eyes narrowed. For a moment, Marcus thought the Admiral would call her bluff. Then he stepped back, inclining his head in a gesture of submission that didn't reach his eyes. The Council requests a report on the Veth system negotiations. Tomorrow? They will have it. Tethran turned and left without another word. The moment the door closed, Keth'vora sagged against Marcus, barely conscious. That was stupid, he said, as he lowered her back to the bed. That was necessary. He knows, or he suspects. He suspects. Knowing and suspecting are different. She closed her eyes. But you are right. Timeline has shortened. What does that mean? It means we need to move faster. Move faster with what? She opened her eyes, and despite the exhaustion there was steel in them. There is something I need you to do, Marcus. Something I cannot do myself. Not anymore. Name it. The Veth system negotiations are at a critical juncture. If Tethran takes command before they are completed, he will order the colonies destroyed. 40 million people. Marcus felt cold wash over him. What can I do about that? You will go in my place. I'm a prisoner. You are my designated representative. She gestured weakly at the desk, where a holopad glowed with official seals. I have made it legal. Unusual but legal. You will have my full authority to negotiate. Keth'vora, I'm not a diplomat. I'm a soldier. I blow things up for a living. You carried a dead woman through fire because you believed she mattered. Her eyes found his, held them. Those are my people you will be saving. I need someone who understands that they matter. Your people have been trying to kill us for a decade. And your people have been trying to kill us. And yet here we are. She reached for his hand. War is easy, Marcus. Peace is hard. I am asking you to do the hard thing. He looked at the holopad, then at the dying general who had become something he couldn't quite name. Fine, he said. But if this goes sideways, then you improvise. It is what humans do best. She smiled, an actual smile, the first he'd ever seen on her face. It transformed her, softened the hard angles and sharp scales into something almost beautiful. Rest, he said. I'll figure out the details, Marcus. She didn't release his hand. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. I might start a war instead of ending one. You will not. Her eyes fluttered closed. You are too stubborn to fail. He stayed by her side until her breathing evened into sleep. Then he pulled the holopad close and began to read. 40 million lives. 3 days. And a dying general's faith in a man who had never negotiated anything more complex than shore leave. No pressure at all. The negotiations nearly collapsed twice before Marcus remembered he wasn't playing by human rules. The Valorian delegates saw his presence as an insult, a human speaking with the general's authority. They pushed back on every point, challenged every concession. By the end of the first day, Marcus had memorized 17 creative Valorian phrases for inferior species. But he'd also noticed something. The delegates were afraid. Not of him, of what his presence represented. If Keth'vora was delegating to a human, if she trusted an enemy species enough to speak in her name, then the old ways of thinking were crumbling. And they didn't know how to stop it. On the second day, Marcus stopped trying to win. You're right, he told the lead delegate, a grizzled admiral named Vethkar. I am inferior. By your standards, by your history, by everything your culture has taught you, I'm nothing. The room went silent. But here's the thing. Marcus leaned forward. I spent the last month with your general, watching her, learning from her. And the one thing she's taught me is that strength isn't about dominance. It's about choosing when not to destroy. The human speaks philosophy, Vethkar sneered. The human speaks truth. Marcus gestured at the display showing the Veth system colonies. 40 million people. That's what we're talking about. Not territory. Not resources. People. Families. Children. Our enemies. Your future. Marcus stood. General Keth'vora has spent 4 centuries building the Valorian military into the most feared force in the galaxy. She could have crushed those colonies 100 times over. Instead, she protected them. Why do you think that is? Silence, because she knows something you don't. Marcus looked each delegate in the eye. The war is over. You lost. Not to our weapons, not to our tactics. You lost because we fight for each other, and you fight for yourselves. The only question now is whether you lose with dignity or lose with blood. He expected outrage. Threats. Violence maybe. Instead, Vethkar laughed. The general chose well, the admiral said. You speak like she does. That terrifying clarity. I learned from the best. The negotiations concluded that afternoon. The colonies would stand. A formal ceasefire would be announced. It wasn't peace, not yet. But it was the foundation for something that might one day become peace. Marcus returned to Keth'vora's quarters as the ship's night cycle began. He found her awake, barely, propped against the window with her eyes fixed on the stars. It is done? She asked. It's done. Vethkar sends his regards. That old snake. But there was fondness in her voice. He was the hardest. If you won him, then I won them all. Yeah. She turned to look at him, and he saw that her scales had gone almost entirely gray. Her eyes, once brilliant amber, had dulled to a pale gold. Time is short, she said. It wasn't a question. Keth'vora, come. Sit with me. He sat beside her on the floor, their shoulders almost touching. Through the window, a distant nebula painted the void in shades of crimson and gold. I have a confession, she said. Another one. This is the last. She exhaled slowly. I did not choose you because of what I saw at the Theta corridor. That was part of it. But not all. Then why? Because I was afraid. Her voice cracked. I have lived for 400 years. I have commanded armies, conquered systems, shaped the fate of civilizations. And at the end of all of it, I was terrified of dying alone. You're not alone. No, Tyne. She looked at him, and tears, actual tears, tracked down her scaled cheeks. No, I am not. And that is the gift you have given me, Marcus Cole. Not just your presence, but your humanity. Your stubborn, irrational, beautiful humanity. He didn't know what to say. So he did what humans do. He pulled her close, ignoring the awkward angles and alien physiology, and held her. I have one more request, she whispered. Anything. When I am gone, tell them who I was. Not the legend. Not the monster. Tell them about the woman who was afraid and found courage in a human's kindness. I'll tell them. And Marcus, yeah? Do not carry my body through fire. He felt her smile against his shoulder. Let me rest where I fall. I am tired. They sat together as the nebula turned slowly past the window. At some point her breathing changed. Slowed, steadied, then stopped entirely. Marcus didn't move. He held her through the silence, through the cold that crept into her body, through the longest night of his life. When the morning cycle came, he called the guards. The Valorian Empire learned of their general's death through official channels. But the truth, the real truth, came from the human prisoner who stood before the council and spoke for an hour about a woman they had never truly known. He told them about her fear and her courage, about her loneliness and her love, about the choices she had made to protect those who would never thank her. He told them about a monster who was never a monster at all. The ceasefire held. Within a year it became an armistice. Within 5, a formal peace treaty. And in the histories that followed, they wrote of General Keth'vora's final victory. Not a battle won, but a war ended. Not through strength, but through trust. Not alone, but witnessed. Remembered. Human.Fon.